Hello there! Today I'm going to show you some seemingly normal photos, but behind each one hides a disturbing story that will shock you. First, the first photograph is tied to one of America's most chilling urban legends, Charlie No Face. At first glance, many assume this is about a ghost haunting dark roads, but the truth stems from a real person with a deeply tragic life. Raymond Theodore Robinson, born in 1910, grew up in an ordinary family in rural Pennsylvania. He was a gentle boy who loved exploring and had a curious nature. But in 1919, when he was just 9 years old, his life took a horrifying turn. On a summer afternoon, Raymond and some friends were playing near a railroad bridge. Above the bridge ran high-voltage power lines that everyone had been warned never to touch. But kids will be kids, curious and impulsive. Raymond decided to climb up to see if he could touch that wire without anything happening. The moment his small hand made contact with the wire, a terrible 22,000-volt current surged through his body. The boy collapsed, writhing in agony. Raymond's friends panicked and ran away, thinking he was dead. But Raymond survived, though he was no longer himself. The accident completely disfigured his face. He lost his nose, both eyes were blinded, and his mouth and parts of his skin were severely burned. From that point on, Raymond could never live like a normal person again. He chose a life of isolation, staying inside for decades, only venturing out after dark. Each night, he would walk for miles along the dark road near his home, both for exercise and to enjoy the little bit of freedom he had. Local residents gradually spread word about the man without a face wandering at night, and from this, the name Charlie No Face was born. What few people knew was that Raymond actually had an incredibly gentle and polite personality. Those brave enough to approach and strike up a conversation found him to be a likable person who smiled often. Despite carrying physical pain for his entire life, he maintained patience and resilience. However, not everyone was kind to Raymond. Many teenagers would drive out just to frighten or mock him. Sometimes people would throw bottles or shout, treating him like late-night entertainment. Raymond endured it all in silence, rarely fighting back. Raymond Robinson passed away in 1985 at age 74. After a long life spent in darkness. But instead of being remembered as a courageous man who fought against fate, he was transformed into a supernatural urban legend, Charlie No Face, Green Man, a symbol of fear for many generations. Second, this photo appears to show just an ordinary moment. 7 astronauts smiling and waving inside the spacecraft cabin. But in reality, this was their last photograph. Just days later, the entire Columbia crew would never return to Earth. The STS-107 mission launched on January 16, 2003. The crew consisted of 7 people, including scientists and research specialists from the United States, Israel, and India. Throughout their 16 days in orbit, everything went smoothly. They regularly sent back enthusiastic images, smiles, excitement, and pride at seeing the world from above. This is a photo of the shuttle during liftoff. Everything seemed normal, but actually, if you look carefully, you'll see something falling off. This was actually a piece of insulating foam from the fuel tank that broke off during the shuttle's launch, and this foam piece struck the left wing of the shuttle. This seemingly minor detail was actually the source of the tragedy for the crew. In reality, the impact left a large hole, weakening the wing's heat resistance capability. On February 1, 2003, Columbia began its journey back to Earth. When the shuttle entered the atmosphere, friction created temperatures of over 1,500 degrees Celsius. However, at this moment, sensors recorded a sudden spike in temperature. It turned out that during launch, the insulating foam had collided with the shuttle's left wing, causing a small leak in the left wing. Within just a few minutes, the external temperature entered the shuttle cabin through the breach. Very quickly, Columbia caught fire and exploded in the Texas sky, breaking into thousands of pieces that fell to the ground. All 7 astronauts died instantly. The explosion shocked the entire world. People found shuttle debris scattered mainly across Texas and Louisiana. The most haunting aspect was the photos they took before landing. Their bright smiles, radiant eyes, were completely opposite to what the astronauts had to endure before death, that they were burned alive at temperatures that could melt even diamonds. Third, this is just a photo of some students in a psychology study at university, but behind it lie a tragic story. In 1971, a job posting appeared at Stanford University. It called for male students to participate in a psychological experiment about prison life, paying $15 per day. 24 people signed up. They were randomly divided, 12 as prisoners, 12 as guards. To increase realism, real police came to arrest the prisoner group. Once inside the prison, they no longer had names, only numbers. The guard group received uniforms, wooden batons, and complete control. Those playing guards were required to be strict with the prisoners. But this very requirement to be harsh, even cruel, turned the entire experiment into one of history's scandals. On the first day, there were no major incidents. But by the second day, prisoners began to rebel. One guard used a fire extinguisher to spray directly into the cell. After that, punishments appeared constantly, forced push-ups at any time, bathroom privileges revoked and replaced with a bucket. Some had bags placed over their heads, and some were even forced to remove their clothing. According to plan, the experiment was to last 2 weeks, but by just the 6th day, Dr. Philip Zimbardo, the organizer, had to stop it. Many prisoners after the experiment fell into a state of panic and suffered serious psychological trauma. Zimbardo published the results. Ordinary people can become cruel when given power in specific environments. However, the experiment was heavily criticized, and people believed the experiment's results were unreliable because, first, the participants lacked diversity. All guards were young, male students. Second, the instruction to be cruel from the beginning skewed the results. Fourth, at first glance, this is just an ordinary photo. A young woman with a gaunt face sitting in a room with priests. But in reality, this captures a moment from one of the most famous exorcisms of the 20th century. And a seemingly small detail in this story, her parents stopping her medication, was actually the starting point of the tragedy. Anneliese Michel was born in 1952 in Germany. At age 16, she began having epileptic seizures and was diagnosed with mental disorders. From 1968 to the early 1970s, she was treated with anti-seizure medication and sedatives. But her condition didn't improve. Anneliese exhibited abnormal behaviors, unprovoked anger, throwing objects, eating insects, hearing voices in her head, and by 1975, Anneliese's parents began believing that their daughter wasn't just mentally ill, but haunted by devil, so they stopped medication. But this very decision, stopping medical treatment and instead inviting priests to perform exorcisms, opened the door to a chain of tragic events. From 1975 to 1976, Anneliese underwent a total of 67 exorcism sessions, 1 to 2 times per week. Throughout this process, she gradually stopped eating, her body weakening rapidly. Many photos still capture her exhausted, skeletal appearance during the rituals. But I mean, it was understandable if her parents believed their daughter was possessed by demons because there were also many chilling rumors that spread about this case. On July 1st, 1976, Anneliese Michel died at home at age 23. The official cause, malnutrition and dehydration, after months of barely eating or drinking. Fifth, and the final photos is connected to the mysterious disappearance of Jennifer Kesey in Orlando, Florida. In 2006, Jennifer was only 24 years old, had a high-paying job in finance, and had bought her own condo. The area where she lived had many construction sites, and Jennifer often felt uncomfortable because construction workers would stare at her whenever she walked by. One day, while sitting in a bar, Jennifer struck up a conversation with a man named Rob. Because they got along so well, the two quickly became a couple. From then on, Jennifer and Rob would always text each other extensively every morning. On the evening of January 23, 2006, Jennifer and Rob still texted each other a lot before wishing each other goodnight. But the next morning, something unusual happened. Rob didn't receive any texts from Jennifer. At first, he thought she was busy, but throughout that entire day, he still couldn't contact Jennifer. At the same time, Jennifer's parents also called Rob because they couldn't reach their daughter. Worried, Rob and the family immediately went to Jennifer's condo. When they opened the door with the spare key, they didn't see her anywhere. Personal belongings were still intact, with no signs of break-in. Police were called, but they also discovered nothing unusual in the condo except for a photograph taken of Jennifer's bathroom on the day she disappeared. A few days later, a nearby resident reported to police about a strange car parked in the neighborhood. When they checked, police confirmed it was Jennifer's car. Security cameras in the area captured images of a man getting out of the vehicle. His direction of movement showed that he was the one who had left Jennifer's car there. However, the suspect's face was obscured in all the frames, making identification impossible. From the limited data, police could only theorize. That morning, Jennifer left her condo to go to work and may have been approached by a man right in the parking garage. He might have asked for a ride or forced her, then made Jennifer drive to another location before abandoning the vehicle. The man appearing in the camera became the only suspect, but because there were no clear images and no direct evidence, the case reached a dead end. To this day, Jennifer Kesey is still listed as missing, leaving no other traces behind.